Beauty contains ugliness, just as truth conceals lie. And for reconciliation to take place, beauty and ugliness must be reconciled into a concrete unity that is a higher form of beauty, which is also truth. This project was born out of the suffering I witnessed when I visited Yad Vashem, the Holocaust Museum in Jerusalem. While I was walking around the museum, it had been a long time that I had thought about the Holocaust. And of course, being in Israel, there were constant reminders of the Holocaust. But being in Yad Vashem was very, very moving and extremely upsetting, and it made me feel real hopelessness with humanity. I felt huge frustration and absolute despair, and I wanted to say something that could react to my experiences. I knew the only way that I could do something was with art. And as I was walking through the doors of the Holocaust Museum, I made a pact to myself that I would produce a piece of art that represented how I was feeling that day, that spoke about some kind of reconciliation between Christians and Jews. I had always been intrigued by the country, and for years had wanted to explore Jerusalem and visit the grave of my great-grandfather Miles Elliott. In 1932, my great-grandfather was positioned as Solicitor General to Palestine during the British Mandate, but in 1933 he was assassinated outside the King David Hotel and buried in a Christian cemetery on Mount Zion, overlooking the Gardens of Gethsemane. It was a story long told in our family and was a place I always wanted to visit. For this project, I wanted to connect two Jews set 2,000 years apart by sharing their mutual wounds, Jesus and a Holocaust survivor. But I knew that I needed to meet a survivor who would agree to talk to me about his experiences and to lend me his tattoo number before I could begin this project. But not in a million years did I think that I would meet by chance a Holocaust survivor of Auschwitz, whom on liberation from the concentration camps went on to study the life and times of Jesus Christ for over 40 years.
My name is Eliezer Goldwyn. My number is 157040.
He taught me a lot about humanity. Despite all his suffering, he was able to rise out of the mud and love people again. He wasn't stuck in the mud. He talked to me about how some people, when they left Auschwitz, understandably, were left in the mud of Auschwitz, quite literally and also symbolically, the ones who survived. Besides creating the arm in mud initially, I also felt compelled to make a sculpture out of Eliezer in clay. There's an interesting connection between the fact that Eliezer spoke very specifically about rising out of the mud and how this project began in clay, which is literally mud. I was classically trained to paint portraits in Florence, and I moved there when I was 19 and became a portrait painter, and I was really inspired by all the art of the Renaissance around Florence, and we used to go into all the churches and all the museums and the Uffizi. I carried on working in clay on the arm, and I started making a number of small versions of the arm, so I knew that it was always going to become something much bigger than what I was actually making. But I was finally able to put the number of the Holocaust survivor onto the arm and really see the two symbols suddenly unified together in one piece. I wanted to produce the arm in Carrara marble really because I loved the connection of bringing it back to the Renaissance, something that the Renaissance used to sculpt all their imagery of Christ. But also because of the purity of the marble, it was somehow representing the innocence of the survivors. I wanted to discuss what Jesus and Eliezer have in common, which is suffering and survival, and what they don't have in common, which is that Jesus suffered for the sins of humanity, and Eliezer suffered because of the sins of humanity.
Jesus as a born Jew, if he were living today, or if he were living at the time of Nazism, he would suffer like all the other Jews, and he would have his number also on his arm.
Jesus is defined by his crucifixion, and Eliezer is not defined by his experiences in Auschwitz or the tattoo on his arm. He just wants to lead an ordinary life in the present.
That both Jesus and myself survived the inhumanity of mankind. Jesus by the stigma, and myself by the number, the tattoo on my arm.
But this piece punches you and it's shaking your hand. It's talking about the worst of humanity and also the best of humanity. It's trying to combine these two elements of suffering and survival.
A marvelous sculpture of yours, to me, is enough by itself. It doesn't need more explanation than 3 words. Do not forget. And this we should shout to the world, and to say it many, many times a day in order to be heard.
Do not forget, because history repeats itself, and we have to be so careful that we check ourselves how we're treating humans today.